Well, folks, looks like it's just a little bit after 6:30 here. So welcome again. Thanks for taking your time this evening for another one of our State Fire Chiefs Leadership Series. Again, appreciate your sacrifice to be here. Appreciate the sacrifice of Chief Ray to be with us this evening to impart some words of wisdom from his viewpoint of things. Of course, as everybody knows, we started this leadership series as kind of a way of reaching out to everybody across the state in a little different format, and we actually got some visitors from out of state, so that's pretty cool too. But in a little different format that we know not everybody can make it to the conferences and everything, and yet we've got the ability to bring some of that same type of information that we do at the conferences right here via the new Zoom or Teams world, whatever we want to do. So tonight we're privileged. We have with us Shane Ray, who's going to talk to us about leading fire protection today and beyond, and who's our team, but a little bit of background about Shane. The neat thing about Shane is he has covered the gamut of the fire service, been in the volunteer fire service, worked as a career firefighter, moved up through the ranks, became fire chief, has served as mayor. So he understands all sides of the system, and he is currently the president of the National Fire Sprinkler Association. And I've had the opportunity to know Shane for a while now. We've had the privilege of having him out at a couple of our conferences. And he's always a great person to be there, impart wisdom to us. And with that said, I will just let you take it away. We joke around a little bit about saying that Shane is from the southern part of our country. So if you're having a problem understanding it, there probably will be some taglines pop up at the bottom of your screen, maybe to help you figure out what he just said, maybe not, but nonetheless, he'll get the point across one way or another. So Shane, thanks for being with us. Thanks for taking your evening and joining us again tonight. So it's all yours, sir.
Thank you, Chief Calgary. I appreciate it. And thank you to the Montana Fire Service. It's great to be with you. I'm coming to you from the good state of Maryland. So as the chief said, hopefully you got that translator app down there. But since I am a little further north than I'm used to, then at least maybe I'll talk faster so we can get this over with sooner. So, but thanks for joining me. I appreciate the Montana Fire Service. As a student of Chief Brunasini, as an intern in Phoenix many years ago, going to school at Eastern Kentucky University, Chief Brunasini used to take us kids in there and let us hang out with him. So there was always usually one there from Montana as well. So long time relationship with you all in Montana. Hope to continue that. And I want to say thank you to the Montana Fire Service as well, because you all stood beside of us, and I guess we stood beside you, being not from there. They said, we don't want you foreigners speaking at our state legislature. And so we had to use you all as fire chiefs to fight the battle to keep fire sprinklers from being prohibited at the local level in new homes especially. So thank you for that battle. Everybody stood beside us. It was the first time we'd ever had such a good cooperation with all the fire service groups in the state, as well as the insurance. It was the first place in the country the insurance industry stood beside of us. So that's thanks to you all in Montana in the fire service. They respect you there, and to our contacts. I had a lot of good inside intel there from Dr. Crandall on here with who to talk to, who not, and some of those things. And of course, Chief Calgary leading the fire chief's legislative efforts really helped us a lot. So when I say thank you, I sincerely mean it. We'll jump right into these slides. I wish we could be more interactive in this thing, but as time don't let us, and some of the other things don't. But the intent of our time together here is to make us think more holistically, and that's why I added in the title that said fire protection and fire service. I think we get those wires crossed, and I want to bring that together. And then I want to talk about seeking. I'm going to show you one of the tools that we use, and unfortunately it costs a little bit of money, but there's other ways you can do things to attract the right people who's seeking to help the community. And I know, looking at the growth rate in Montana, that you're getting a lot of people moving in to Montana. So we got to just make sure that we don't simply conform, and that we realize there's a difference between trusting and conforming, but we got to do it welcoming. So I share those things to say that's the idea here, is to go a little bit deeper than perhaps we sometimes do. If you don't have a happy, healthy life, doing what you love to do, then got to ask why not. So there's changes that you have to make. There's a lot of good reading, whether you do a devotional, whether it's you do something that I don't do but should do, and that's exercise, those kind of things. I think COVID brought some of those on, and we'll touch on that in a little bit, that says, hey, maybe we need to do something different here, and maybe we need to change our habits. What about our vision? Are we trying to be innovative? Are we using these times like the rest of the world's using these times to transform ourselves in the fire service? And that's one of the things I think we really need to do. I've been blessed to be, number one, was the fire chief in Pleasant View, Tennessee for many, many years. 13 years as a fire chief, 26 years there as a volunteer, while I worked for the city of Brentwood as a career firefighter, career fire officer. But during this COVID, I've been fortunate to be able to go home, and it's always good to be able to go home, because once we closed our offices here in Maryland in March of 2020 and didn't travel for a couple of months, but during those times, I said, I got a home in Pleasant View. So the good thing is I've been able to be back in Pleasant View, Tennessee, watching and learning again from the volunteer fire service. In that case, now it's a combination system with volunteers and career firefighters because of the growth of the community and watching that community trying to keep up. But they, much like you here, have a grant. They've been successful with the SAFER grant, fire prevention grant. They work volunteers. They have a smoke alarm program where they change out the smoke alarms, and then every home in the community is now unique because I estimate over 70% of the homes in the community are protected with fire sprinklers. Well, and the businesses too, because they had a 0 square foot sprinkler ordinance since 2001. So it's been nice to see the effects of that growth, but now we're watching the effects of volunteerism, and then it drops off. And I tell them that says, well, I feel bad because I'm a fair weather firefighter. It's like I come and go when I want to. And I don't know if that's the privilege of being old or if that's just truly how my lifestyle is. But those are the things that we work with, and that's where our values come into play. As we watch the transformation of ourselves and our communities, we have to take a look at that from a perspective as to how's this going to impact the organization. And that's kind of what I'd like to jump into now. So, hey, there's benefit. We got to see positive. I know as I talk to some of my own family members, it's like everything's going down. How many things impact them? I'm like, this is the best times of our life. That when you have the opportunities that we have, when the growth is healthy like it is, and those things, it's up to us to make it positive yourself. The other thing is our organization and our community and our profession. And I think that's where I've been blessed to put a lot of my life into, sometimes at the detriment of myself. But now's an opportunity to make change. During COVID, we changed our response policies. Guess who was the most critics of us changing the response policy? That said, hey, we're not going in on every medical call now. We're going to wait outside, or we're not going to go on certain calls anymore. We're going to change our emergency medical dispatch program. As we made those changes for ourselves, it says, hey, we got to protect ourselves. We got to protect our family, because if we don't, we're no good to the community. And the number one people who criticized those decisions were our own firefighters, EMS workers, and other people in the community that were affiliated with emergency service organizations. You know how many complaints we got from citizens? None. And so those are all the things that are going to make changes to us in the future. And that's what we want to try to look at as we go forward. But I'm going to share my screen here so we can get through some of these things and go forward with what we want to deal with here. So let's see if I can get this done. How'd that? Somebody got a thumbs up that can see the slide?
It's good.
All right, perfect. Thanks for the thumbs up there. Complacency, though, what we got to fight during this, and why I tell those stories about being back at home during COVID is fight that complacency. I'm in an industry, as they said, that is the president of the National Fire Sprinkler Association. Naturally, we represent the entire fire sprinkler industry, and that includes you as fire inspectors, fire officials, fire marshals, fire chiefs, firefighters, anybody that interacts with the system. But we also represent the entire industry, from the actual sprinkler device itself, which there's only 4 manufacturers of that left in the country. They've all bought and acquired other companies. But from the sprinkler contractor who does the install to the manufacturer who makes the pipe for the system, the flow switches, all the way out to the fire hydrant, the fire department connection, those things. And of course, those are for-profit businesses. We're a not-for-profit association. I like to say we're the IFC of the sprinkler industry. We have giant companies, we have little bitty companies, we have small companies, publicly traded companies, and those things. But as I watch the 2 different industries that's different, that says in the fire service, I spent my whole career as a fire chief fighting for more. I got to have more. I need more stations, more trucks, more people, more. And of course, in the business world, it's like, hey, what can we need to do more with less? Now, I heard that all the time, and we in government, as the fire service, was told, you guys are always trying to do more with less. We just got to go demand more. The cops get more. Well, that's a bad circle. And that's where some of these books will help with the fact that says, hey, we got to make some changes here. Well, now's the time to make those changes, because with inflation, what it is, and those kind of things, people are tired of paying more. And so the challenge is, some of us are in areas where they're not paying hardly anything. So paying something is going to be better than what they've been doing. And our volunteer fire department went through that. We transitioned from where we were totally donation based to now where we're a combination of tax funded donations, contracts with other city governments, contracts with other local governments for different services, such as inspection services and those kind of things. So we've been creative over the last 25 years to try to make sure our revenue kept pace with the growth of the community. But that's one of the things that we have to fight here is change. Don't become complacent. How do people change? If I ask you the question here, which one of these 5 traits are the hardest to change? I think most of us would agree that attitude and changing our values and habits might seem hard, but our attitude is one of those things that says, well, a lot of that's derived from our values, but as Southwest Airlines learned a long time ago, we can give people the skills and we can give them the knowledge. We do that in the fire protection industry. It's like we can train somebody on the code and the standard of how to apply to a building being built new, or the standard to how the sprinkler system is installed. We can give them the knowledge and the skills to use CAD and Revit and all the things they have to do to design the fire protection system of that building. But the biggest thing for us to do that's changed is to change their attitude. If they see that says, hey, I'm designing this 750,000 square foot facility that at some point is going to be an Amazon facility or something, then this system has to function. It's like we're in the 100% business. We like to say and use NFPA statistics that said we're 96% effective. Well, guess what? We're going for 100 because we don't ever want a system to fail. And we know that fire sprinklers, when they don't work, 99% of the time in reality, they're turned off. And so those are the things that we're trying to work on that says, hey, but we got to have the people that share the values, create the habits, and have the attitude that says, I'm here to make a difference. And that's what I've noticed too, is we try to recruit volunteers. The Pleasant View Fire Department has had many SAFER grants. They've recruited, the chief said the other day, he said that we've recruited over 400 people, Shane. He said, and we've retained less than 25. over the past 5 years, I believe. Their call volume has gone up 28% annually. And so they're a volunteer fire department, combination with only paid staff during the day. They cover nights and weekends with shift workers and station duty crews. But now there are nearly 3,000 calls a year, and it's hard to maintain that. So attracting the right people is a big deal. How do we get it right? I wish I had those answers for you, but we got to look at how change affects people. And I think that's now more than ever that says, why can't we get community volunteers? We opened up and went outside to other volunteers. And then even the Brentwood Fire Department, where we used to have more people to test than we could possibly get through the system. So Brentwood had a requirement that said you had to have 60 hours of college before you could even apply to weed down the numbers of people that could participate. But then now it's like, I think the last time they had a job open, they had 8 people apply. I just came from a meeting in Chicago, where in Illinois, where they made marijuana legal. It's like, how do we do testing for the jobs? And how do we do all these other things? Well, all those things are affecting people. And of course, I've never seen anything like it in my life in comparison to the debates over the vaccine. And so it's one of those things that says, hey, what is this? We're losing our liberty. Well, is it that, or is it truly public health? And it goes all ways and all sides. But as I said, with the values, I want to go try to attract the people who share my values to work in the team and on the system. But I also want to respect those people who don't share my values and also who can contribute to the rest of the team. So I got to fight fear, and I got to try to inspire. That's a true leadership challenge as to how we do those things. So as we go forward, this is kind of a cartoon graphic of what this thing looks like. It's like, which part of this are you? Do you go from fear and total resistance over to acceptance? And there's a good book, Gary Brees, who used to run the IFC. When I took over as the second vice president of the International Society of Fire Service Instructors, he gave me a book, and some of this is where it come from. It's like, it's not just about change. It's about sometimes you have to make a transition. And that transition means that there is an ending of something. You have to stop doing something that you've been doing in order to do something new. That's true transformation. And where people shake out in this is, it's different for all people, different for organizations. And those are the things too we'll continue to talk about. What causes these people to change? It is a significant emotional event. Well, this pandemic has sure been a significant emotional event for everybody. We have seen death like I've never seen in my life for the people that I know. We lost a firefighter in his early 40s when the pandemic first hit. And everybody was like, well, what happened to it? He probably had one of those other traits or one of those underlying conditions. I said, yeah, his underlying condition was the same as me. Might have been a little fluffy, but he was still an active firefighter. So those things all made us change. I know of associations that their staff went and rented VRBOs, and they traveled around the country during COVID for the most part, and then said, hey, let's go, we can run the organization from somewhere else. That caused a lot of life changes as well. Well, for us, again, we still continued to travel with safety and everything in mind, but we limited, we gave our people more choices, and we went from an employer standpoint to an employee led that said, hey, we got to take care of our people. But I think it's helped us all grow a little bit better and a little bit stronger. And that's where we have to make it positive. I want to share with you here, it's a tool we use. I'm not sure if you can see this very well, but it's called Predictive Index. It costs a little bit of money, but it's one thing that it's for the incumbents, and it is also for new hires. So we go put our position descriptions, as we call them, into this system. And if you could see, it draws me out a chart as to what these people's skill sets are from a standpoint of this assessment that you get. So if you go on our website and apply for a job, the first thing you're going to get is this assessment. And so when you get that, it sees and says automatically coming into us, it says, is this a fit? And it gives a percentage as to what that fit is. And so we look at that. But the other thing too is we use it for ourselves. It's got the coaching guides. It's got the manager's position that says, hey, how do I work with another one of my colleagues? And then I can go build other teams. It allows me to go say, if I wanted to take Chief Calgar, Chief Waldo, Chief Crandall, Chief Hewitt, Chief Butler, if I want to take all of you in the system and put you in here, it says, how are these people going to play off of one another's strengths and weaknesses? So it's a fantastic tool, especially for hiring. It's saved us a lot of money and a lot of time in going through the processes, especially of hiring key people, because in the fire protection world, there's not a ton of us. And so when you're trying to get a specific job field that says, hey, I need somebody that's fire protection engineer, I need somebody that's a NICET level 3, or I need somebody that's a fire officer that has the hazmat, that has all these things, this thing will allow you to group those folks together and give you guidance and documentation as to how to best utilize their skills. And as a manager and a leader, it will also give you tips for how to manage. They call it a read back. How do you read and take feedback in that system? So it's worked very well for us, but there's other tools out there that's very affordable that you can use to make sure that says, hey, let me use some other tools. And again, blessed here with the professional side of the house here that has the resources to give me these tools, but certainly an eye opener for us to utilize this tool. How organization changed, managing the organizational change, managing transitions. This was that book that I said that Gary Brees gave me, Managing the Transitions. And most fire departments, I think it's safe to say that we like to look at procedures. And then, of course, when the calls go out, it's values and attitudes most part. So as our procedures go, though, we really ought to take a look at our processes and our systems. And that's what it's been fun for me to watch. As I've been back in Tennessee, is to say, man, we have got to change our systems. Give you an example, going on those responses. It's like an accident on the interstate anymore. It's like, okay, here's how I know there's a serious wreck on the interstate. It's when they're dispatching it and you can hear the other 911 systems ringing in the background. It's like, all right, that's probably pretty bad. There's 46,000 cars a day that travel the interstate. And guess what? Everybody traveling the interstate has two phones, at least has one phone. For like my dad even transitioned to a smartphone. So, and now they're making flip phones smart. So I'm like, there is plenty of information coming down that interstate to get the severity of that call, to determine how many resources do we put on that call. And it's like just doing the standard response protocol to that was putting too many people in harm's way unnecessarily. And so as we evaluate those types of systems, it's like, what is that? Then it come Halloween time and corn maze time and haunted house and all those things. We're from the land of tobacco. So you drive in Tennessee between August and November in Middle Tennessee around Nashville, you're likely to see barns smoking. And so when you see that, it's like that's the tobacco curing process. So they build fires in the bottoms of the barn, it smokes the tobacco. Well, I'm like, okay, boys and girls, we're to the point we're going to have to go put signs on these barns that says the barn's not really on fire. And please do not open the doors because we don't want to give it any air. And so never did we think there'd be a day when we had 10,000 cars driving to a cornfield that would want to go on a corn maze. And so, but the population's changed enough that it's there. So what are you doing to evaluate your processes and your systems? And can you change your procedures and your attitudes and have some value shifts to do things in a little different way? What causes the organization to change? There's a lot of things. A new leader, that's me. I didn't come from the fire sprinkler world, but my education's in fire protection. I spent my time in the fire service. I started out though in fire protection because I worked in Oak Ridge, Tennessee at the Department of Energy site there where they enriched the uranium for the atomic bomb. And that they had every sprinkler system known to man. Little did I know how valuable that would be to me, or for me to go work in an organization like Brentwood, Tennessee, that made me be I had to be a state certified fire inspector because I was responsible for the inspections in my first due. And so unless it had to go to get a citation issued, then that's when the fire marshal got involved, because we only had one employee in the fire marshal's office, and that was the fire marshal, him or herself. And so all kinds of things and all the competition in the world now, these guys and gals that stay up late at night worried about all those things they worry about. But the external factors that come into play here as well, and that's what we're seeing. There's a pandemic, there's elections, there's all these other things, the economy. The economy has to drive our decision making, and I've never seen it as a fire chief. I never exercised it myself, except when I found out, of course, certainly as Chief Calgar said, I was the mayor. So I got to see the tax side of our system that said, wow, we don't really pay enough taxes here to sustain any type of service level. And so once you see those things, you have to say, well, what am I going to do about it as a leader? And speaking of leaders, if we watch the leaderboard here, if you look at the top 10 companies in 1990, with most of them had to do with automobiles and fuel. One on the group was pharmaceutical. When you go to the 2000s, it's like, oh, there's starting to be some change. And look at Walmart jump on the board, tobacco companies, and more from the standpoint of technology. And so if you keep going on out with those things in 2020, look, you've added healthcare and drug manufacturers and certainly technology. And then all your large cap stocks is just the big boys and girls pushing out the little boys and girls. And so those things are things that says, well, how does that affect the fire service? Well, it's just an awareness level. We have to keep this awareness level that says, mayors, who's the county commissioners, who's the legislative body of the state, who's getting elected. Those things are going to have an impact on us. And certainly COVID had a big impact on us. And civil unrest. I know I got a couple of my friends from Minnesota on this call that have done a good job of documenting some of the things, but it didn't just start. That's been a way of life in our country since we've been a country. Well, I know you folks in Montana will not tolerate it, so thank you for watching the rest of us on TV. But the one thing that I do know you can watch it right outside your window. And this is a picture from my desk at home that I sit there and said, wow, look, this Amazon van comes to the house across the street about 3 times a day. Well, when COVID hit, guess what? A lot of people went home to do their businesses. And so as we started seeing cleaning companies, and this lady over here started making the engraved cups and things that she was selling out of her home, as all those things changed, well, so did the fire environment. But that didn't start now. That's changed over the last 20 or 30 years, as more and more of our homes have changed. They've gotten bigger. And the one thing that's for a fact now, and I've been looking at homes here in Maryland, which it's the worst time to buy a home, but I'm like, there's some of these closets, and I said it in a speech the other day. I'm like, I look at homes now that the closet is larger than I think my bedroom was when I was in kindergarten. So those things with our homes change. And then because of that, we have a lot more stuff. And just the pure volume of materials and items in the house that are synthetic naturally make huge changes to what we're doing and how we ought to look at those. And then the number of incidents. The incidents are going way up. As I said, the incidents in Pleasant View had increased 28% annually for a good while. That's nearly, I think when I was fire chief, we was barely over 1,000 calls. And that was a decade ago. And now they're nearly at 3,000. And so with that, it's like, what are you going to do about this rate of change that's being put on you from the outside? Innovations, you can be forced to change through innovation. It's like, what's the drive-through going to look like in the future? I would love to be able to visit Chick-fil-A or Kentucky Fried Chicken or Amazon or any of these places and look at their research and development departments because of how they're trying to innovate and change. I noticed when I went to Subway this afternoon to get me a salad to bring back here, there's an Exxon gas station with a Burger King and a Subway in the same building. There was 2 workers in the whole place. And so the person making the Burger King was making my Subway. What's these changes going to continue to look like? What about these transitions? These old malls, they started in New England and now they're moving across the country that says, hey, let's put this thing in an Amazon fulfillment center. They need more and more and more space out there. What are we doing to attract people that can help us to deal with these things? And how are we working with people that we normally haven't worked with? And so it's like, are you working with the fire sprinkler contractors? Are you working with the fire alarm contractors? That we put millions and millions of dollars worth of fire protection systems in this building. And then I go out here and I see some fire department that says, we don't trust those things and are not using them. I'm like, please, let's get together and have some conversations, because that's not how this system's going to tolerate one another and not how it should work, because the system here is going to try to do what it can, and then it's going to need your help. Well, guess what? All those contents that I were talking about to you, it's going to need your help more than ever before, because it is pushing the limits of the fire protection system. It's pushing the limits of us. We learned that certainly with the Charleston Sofa Superstore fire, right? It's like that thing overwhelmed us. We could have never thought that a report was going to come out that said, oh, Shane, this is like having a gasoline tanker inside of this old Piggly Wiggly store, which had been converted into a sofa sales store, so a furniture store. All these things are going on around us and in your communities. And even in my little community that I lived in and still live and have a home, they got 1 million+ square foot Lowe's distribution center right out in the middle of the country here. And so it's big changes. Office to residential. You're seeing this conversion, especially as people now, because of the economy, they want to put more and more money into real estate, because we're getting more population. In case you in Montana wasn't aware of that, you're like, certainly we see that every day. Not necessarily do we like it. And so as these convert, though, it takes a lot of our cooperation as the fire department to make these projects go. And I can't do enough to encourage you to align the right people to work with the groups that's coming into your community, so that the fire department is involved, aware, and knowledgeable, and leading transition that's beneficial to the community. Speaking of leading transition, we've been doing this for a long time. And there's me and my great mentor, Chief Brunacini. We're sitting in the streets. He's sitting on the front bumper of a fire truck where he loved it. He's watching us burn all these houses in Spartanburg, South Carolina. We're doing this to try to encourage firefighters at the time to do these studies to say, we want you to get water on the fire faster. And then as a result of the Loudoun County, Virginia fire that happened at Meadowwood Circle, that fire prompted us all to say, we got to, even though they did a great job on that, and it was run seamlessly from command and those kind of things, it's like we still couldn't get water on that fire to when the Mayday calls come out. And so it's like, what does it look like inside a house when the Mayday call comes out? And we were doing these burns. We burned, I believe, 16 houses overall before that project was done. We just go and burn one house, move across the street, looking at the energy code, looking at new windows, how all those things affected the fire. We brought a lot of talented people through that system to say, hey, watch this, give us your feedback. And the studies that NIST done for us at the time, now that the UL Fire Safety Research Institute is doing, is fantastic. And I encourage you to go use those resources. what the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation's Everyone Goes Home program is doing. Utilize that. Go to UL, Fire Safety Research Institute. Look at what they are doing to make us better, from the ice-emphasized basement fires to all they're doing with ventilation. But we looked at here that said, do not delay that water. If they're calling Mayday, 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 we need to stop that thermal insult. And so that was transforming. We was like thinking firefighters do it different. And the faster the water, the better. We had no incident in that where our application of water harmed a firefighter, especially that was enough to make them call Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And unfortunately, I have to watch and see still that says line of duty deaths continue to occur. In 2003, some of that stuff started with the fact that we started looking at line of duty deaths that occurred while engaged in interior firefighting. Not anything else. It said, look, we're going to take out all those other things. We just want to look at these situations. How much water are they flowing? How many lines can we get going? In what amount of time? But what's the condition that they're in? That's what we could measure with instrumentation. And said, look, this is the action we need to take. Well, we're doing a lot better across the country at that. But unfortunately, this year right here in Maryland, we had a firefighter die that fell through the floor. We had another firefighter die recently that fell through the floor. That just keeps going. But the other thing that's changing too that concerns me is, again, this holistic approach to the fire protection world is, how do we bring all this together and understand that we are part of one big family intended to protect our community? And I'll share with you this next video here, if it'll play. I know that you probably don't have any sound with it. So with that, I would just ask you to bear with me as we go through this video. I'll try to speed it up a little bit here. And so this is one of those that says, look, as the configurations change and the commodities change, how you manage a fire in a Home Depot, a Lowe's, a Walmart, any of the places where you respond to now, especially that has racks in it and has the display of materials and goods, we want you to really concentrate on how you do that, because you have to these two side-by-side units here as its own building, because even protected with fire sprinklers, it is likely to collapse at some point, because again, where there's a shielded fire, you can see the fire sprinklers controlling this. But the things we need you to do is support the system. That sprinkler up at that roof deck 25 feet away is doing all it can do. It needs you. It needs us as the fire service to get there to pump that system and get water going to it, and then let the sprinklers and you work. That's a key, is to let us all work together so that we can control that fire. And as you do that, the fire sprinklers there, hopefully that they contain it to that area. That's what they're intended to do. And then you can get it to support the system so that it continues to flow. Because if it don't flow, if it gets a limited water supply, it's going to allow other sprinkler heads to activate. That's bad, because then you're going to need more water and more water. So it's designed to keep it in that design area. Then you support the sprinkler system and just let it flow. And that's where we have to develop something we're not very good at, and that's patience. Because we've seen where we've burned down, and I could show you examples of millions of square feet of buildings we've burned down because we prematurely turned the system off. And then once you turn it off, and even when you decide, oh no, it's likely to not catch up, and then it's likely to overwhelm all of us. But these studies, this is a study, they built a house inside of Underwriters Laboratory there in Northbrook, Illinois. And in that, this was a study for positive pressure attack. which is one of the things when I went to South Carolina to be their superintendent of their fire academy, I'm like, I really want to revise that program. But in the meantime, let's pause it and don't teach it right now. Because again, have you ever heard of that old saying, you are playing with fire? Well, I knew one thing, I wasn't very good at that. And so I needed a lot more training to know how this thing was going to work out. And I'd been in the fire service a long time. But I share that with you to share this video that says we went in here and took these houses. This is a 2-story, 3,200 square foot house. We took this house, we lit it, we rebuilt it after the UL Fire Safety Research Institute got finished with it. We redid it and put it back in place, made it identical, and put sprinklers. And we were looking, this is the first time we'd ever done a burn with a house that was built to the modern energy code in a whole house. And so the only thing this didn't have that I wish it had would have been the HVAC system. So we didn't have that, and I believe it would have impacted us some. But I'll run through this thing here with you for a minute. And the key with UL and what's amazing about them, UL's been around for a long, long time. And their whole thing is to test by knowing. And that means we got to recreate it again. So our critics that say, well, this wasn't controlled, that wasn't controlled. The whole idea here is to control the entire environment so that you can replicate it. And so we did that here very well. Now this fire started on the couch, and it has a sprinkler system in it, residential 13D sprinkler system. There's one single head in this. It's an extended coverage head, normal sprinkler, 12 foot by 12 foot. Can go 16 by 16 or 20 by 20. And so in this case, though, you can see the smoke start to build up. And as it does, you'll watch it roll across the ceiling. Now that sprinkler head is going to activate at 155 degrees. And UL's director, Steve Kerber, had been telling me, Shane, you do these demonstrations and you light the curtain on fire. It runs up the curtain, goes across the ceiling in an 8 foot by 8 foot room, hits the sprinkler, and the sprinkler activates within 30 seconds. And I'm like, yes, Steve, that's a demonstration. And he says, well, that's not how it's going to happen in your house, unless you do start the waste paper basket. But here, if you start the fire on the couch, look, we have a much different fire. And so if you can see that, the curtains just lit off. So we know that's probably 500 degrees up there. And so look at the volume of smoke that's created, and look at how minimal of amount of material we've had. So there, the cover plate just fell off the sprinkler, which drops off at 135 degrees. So this smoke's coming out into a room that's 22 foot high. So it comes out of the kitchen and goes up in the great room. And of course, there you see the sprinkler activate, and the sprinkler controls and contains the fire. But it still burns for a good while. If you see the firefighters come in now, that's all that burned in this house that produced all that smoke. The curtain and not even half of that couch was enough to fill the second floor to zero visibility. And that's where I'm trying to get the message out that says firefighters and fire sprinklers, our social media messages, that's an unbeatable team. But if you was on the second floor of this house, they're going to need us as firefighters to rescue. And I tell the firefighters in Pleasant View, this is going to make a hero out of you someday, because you're going to get to do something. I went to 18 fire fatalities in my time there in Pleasant View. We got to make one that we pulled out, and he later died because, again, he was exposed too long, too old at the time, and that kind of stuff, that he just could not recover from that. So the key is here that we got to all work together, and that the environment has changed so much. Now I'll replicate this and show you that says, look, this is what happens. Same scenario when you do not have fire sprinklers. You can see in our room there, if you can see that, you can see that the spray pattern on the ceiling that the sprinkler created. But we started the fire in the same place. Same way, you can see we got the exact same furniture. The only thing I wish I would have done was replace the window. The window back there fails a little quicker than I wanted, which I believe improved the environments inside the house instead of made it worse. So smoke alarm activation again in about the same time. Now you can see the smoke build up in the same way. You'll see it run across the curtain in the same manner. As I speed it up here a little bit for time's sake, but again, this smoke is coming out into a room where the cameras are now is at 23 feet tall. So it has a lot of volume of space to put that smoke, but very little space when you think about how small the rooms are upstairs in comparison. So there you see the curtains catch fire and drop again as that smoke layer becomes superheated. And again, without sprinklers though, without the sprinklers, it went really, really fast. Within 4 minutes and 10 seconds, that house was untenable. And so everybody's still good and with me. Still see could you see the videos? I get a thumbs up from perfect. Thank you there. I appreciate that. The non-sprinklered condition, the flashover in 4 minutes, and here's what the intern said, and this for every one of you that's active firefighters, that second floor in that area increased 1,000 degrees in 6 seconds. And that's what we know, folks, is flashover, and you cannot run from that. We do these demonstrations all over the country. These are our side-by-side burn demonstrations. A special thanks to Chief Waldo and the Montana Chiefs and Bozeman Fire Department for housing our demo unit there and utilizing it for public fire and life safety education across the state. So we're glad to support and help with that, but we couldn't do it without you all. So I say a special thanks. We have 34 of those units out across the country. We got 4 more being built, so coming to a place near you. We also have valve trailers. So we're creating new systems, new mobile training units so that it allows the firefighter, the fire officer, and the fire inspectors and everybody to fully function the unit. So this unit, you could stand in the front, the fire officer could stand in the front at the risers, and the firefighters could go in the back. That's where the fire department connection is. That's where the pressure reducing valves are. That's where the floor control valves are. So it'll simulate, it's real, and they all function. You pump it at 150 pounds, just like you would. You spray water out the back. This unit's in Florida now. They just left here. Taryn Hopkins is our public fire protection specialist that travels around with this trailer. He was a firefighter in Prince George County, Maryland. And he travels around. We have 2 of these. We're going to build 2 more of these trailers that allow you to interact with those systems, and they're fully functional. But it would allow you, whether you got a Hampton Inn down the street that says, hey, you need to close off both floor control valves in both hallways to stop the flow of water. And so we had one out in Arizona, had an e-cigarette fire, flooded like 27 rooms before they turned the system off. And it's like, no, we want you to know when we want you to turn it off. We want you to be familiar with when not to turn it off, and then how to function and operate with those things. So, and again, trying to get the people that want to do these things interested in doing it, but I'll be glad to bring it to Montana in the summer. So, but we have people all over the country. Anything we can do for you as the National Fire Sprinkler Association, please feel free to reach out. Again, I have a big passion for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. They are here close. They're near and dear to my heart. I was with their director the other day, the UL Fire Safety Research Institute. I keep all those folk close. We're all here in our offices. We all have offices in Maryland, but as you can see, I'm very blessed to have a great team of people I get to work with every day out across the country. We like to say the Truman Fire Forum, the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, is doing those across the country. This was us where we hosted this. If you've heard of things like Wing Spread and others, this is the Truman Fire Forum that the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation is going to keep going. Modern fire mitigation. This is where early detection, early suppression, and emergency response. That's the keys to our future. I teach that and preach that with every side-by-side demonstration I do. With every burn I do, we just burn. We got 27 houses between Pleasant View and Ashland City, Tennessee, our neighboring community. The fire chief, they just burned some houses. I could share 100 good things we're doing with VR goggles, trying to give you a different experience to houses. We got 27 houses to burn. We just did that with an old 50-year-old sprinkler, and what the difference is between it and a brand new sprinkler. What's that? How's it going to impact us? But again, early detection, get us notified, early suppression, get water on the fire to contain it with the new environment. But we'll never be able to do it without us as firefighters, without you guys as firefighters. We want to continue that. So I want to say thank you for a lot of progress. You got to build great teams, got to make sure we have emotional safety with our people. We got to get rid of the clutter, bring some clarity to this thing. And as I always like to say, we want to reset, refresh, and remind. And again, that came from the healthcare industry. My friend that works in the healthcare industry, she gave me that said, hey, here's what we have to go through. It's good for us. There's a new day, there's a style, and there's always remember why we do what we do. So for that, I say thank you. I'm going to do one more brave thing today, and then I'm going to run like hell. So God bless you. We'll open this thing up to you all. This is my contact info. It's got my cell phone number on it. You can call me anytime. You can send me an email. I love this profession, and I'll always give the remaining part of my life to it. So God bless you, and thanks for spending time with me.
Thanks, Shane. We appreciate the opportunity that we have anytime to hear you present and spend time with us. So that's we really do appreciate you spending your time this evening. I had sent in the text messages earlier, folks. If anybody's got any questions for Shane that you can throw at him, try and stump him. Chances are you're not going to do it, but go ahead, type them in the chat, and we'll give you a couple minutes there if anybody's got anything. In the meantime, of course, we did record this presentation. So a couple days from now, it'll be up on the Montana State Fire Chief's website. So you can go to that and listen to it again or share it with others that you may not have got the opportunity to listen to it tonight. And then in a couple days, you'll also receive an evaluation link. And honestly, we want to know, again, what your opinions are of these presentations or any kind of ideas or particular subjects that you'd like to see. And we'll see if we can put something together that addresses your needs. So one last chance. We're not seeing anything pop up in the messages. Must have done good, Shane.
I hope so. I wish you could unmute all these nice people so we could have a conversation, but I know it's all of us have had long days. So again, I say thank you.
You know, one of the challenges of the virtual world that we don't get, unfortunately, face to face is that opportunity. It looks like everybody appreciates you taking your time to be with us, Shane. Again, we appreciate everybody taking some of their time this evening. And again, we're doing this on behalf of the State Fire Chiefs Association through efforts through the SAFER grants to be able to bring this information out in a little different format rather than necessarily getting everybody together. So can't speak highly enough of saying everybody thank you, and especially yourself, Shane. And then we'll plan on doing another one. I don't know if we've got another one scheduled for January or not, but Kim and Michael will keep us apprised. And if not, I mean, we'll have something put together for sure in the next month or so with some other topics that we've had people expressed interest in. So Kim, I see you just joined up. You got any corrections for me?
I just really wanted to thank Chief Ray for joining us. We know that he's on a totally different time zone, so we so appreciate it. And Chief Calgar, thank you for your time. I know that you've had a hard day with your bad weather, and many of you may have. So thank you so much. And please share your suggestions for topics that you'd like us to host in the future. So everybody have a very Merry Christmas and happy holiday season. I think
And
that's a
again,
wrap.
evening.
Thank you.